Finovate showcases cutting-edge banking and financial technology through a global conference series featuring short-form demos and thought leadership. Now, the conversation continues on the Finovate podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Finovate podcast. Today, we're going to be talking to another of FinovateFall's Best of Show winners, a company called Finzly, who people saw on the virtual stage in our September event. Joining me from Finzly is Dave Hunkele, the Fintech Strategic Advisor. Dave, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Greg. It's great to be here.
So for anybody who hasn't seen the video yet, which is available, by the way, at finovate.com/videos, Dave, can you start with a quick intro on what Finzly is all about?
Sure. Finzly's powering innovation through a model that lets banks and credit unions subscribe, try, and launch new technology solutions. And we think that can accelerate the pace of innovation for banks. We call it banking at the speed of fintech. We're an 8-year-old company headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina. We do business with financial institutions all across the U.S., and we have international banking, payments, and digital innovation expertise on our team.
Excellent. So the product, I believe, is called BankOS. Can you talk a little bit about how far into the back office it reaches? I mean, one of the questions I'm sure you get all the time, is it a replacement for the core? Does it sit on top of the core? How do you guys think of it?
Sure. BankOS sits on top of the core with an open API layer. And that's really what we see missing from a lot of the legacy tech providers in the core banking space. So the goal of BankOS is to reduce the workload of the core so that the institutions can innovate faster without constant core dependencies. We do connect directly to clearing and settlement systems. We operate as a middle and back office in the FX space today. And we do provide the ability for new digital experiences to be offered. So really front to back is where we position ourselves.
Obviously, you touch a lot of different aspects of the fintech ecosystem. It's not hard to see why your demo resonated so strongly with our audience there. But I'd like to talk a little bit more about the bank side, especially the relationship that banks have with their core service providers. I know, and I'm sure you know, that for smaller banks, this relationship can be pretty rocky. You've seen some of that with your experience through the ICBA and ABA. What have you been hearing from the community banking, small banking space on how they view their relationship with their core service providers?
Sure. I had the pleasure of serving on the ABA Core Committee, which was made up of community bankers. And around the table, most bank executives and CEOs would say they don't want to replace their legacy core systems because it's a high-risk project. It could take a long time, and there's not a clear path to the upside there. So the preference would be to be able to do more business and to be able to innovate faster and further without having to keep going back to that core at every step along the way. That's really the starting point of that conversation.
Sure. No, I think that makes sense. I know a lot of those community banks express frustration with their core service providers, but at the same time, it's a massive undertaking to try and move away from it. And so I think, here's where Finzly really can kind of step in and allow banks to engage with a lot of new types of technology without having to go through that terrible process of upgrading the core. So, the other side of this too, obviously you got some insight into what those banks are looking for from a core service standpoint, but also I know that you were able, as Finzly, able to get some feedback from that community. How did that feedback really shape what Finzly has become?
Well, through the ICBA program, through the accelerator program at the Venture Center in Little Rock, which is a fantastic program, Finzly had the opportunity to participate. And the beauty of that participation is you get in front of a lot of community bankers. I think there was probably 100 different community bankers that came to hear from these tech companies. For the tech companies, there's a tremendous amount of benefit in sharing their message and what it is they're trying to accomplish. And if you take that feedback that community bankers are providing, you can come up with a great solution that really hits the mark, both for the community bank as well as for their customers. So we found that to be a very valuable experience for Finzly.
Was there anything specific that you found surprising, like anything that you were able to take and lump straight into the product offering, thinking, wow, I didn't expect that type of feedback, but we really do need to build out something there to help?
I think the piece that really got interesting fast was for BankOS, there's really 3 options. One is you can leverage native Finzly apps that we develop. Maybe it's a payment hub or digital onboarding. The second is if you're a larger bank, you could consume BankOS with open APIs to develop on your own. And the third, and this is the interesting part, was plug fintech partners into BankOS. We'll do the core integration one time, and you'll get the benefit of being able to choose who you do business with going forward. So it creates so many opportunities to be able to innovate faster and to really get after customer engagement in a way that hasn't been done before. So, we worked with one of the companies that came through the ICBA accelerator was called LendSmart. And so we showed this in the Finovate demo, we showed how easy it was to integrate their solution into BankOS, so that now overnight you could have a mortgage online application that you can capture. And that may have been a service that, 2 days ago as a bank you weren't able to offer. So there's tremendous power in being able to move that quickly and to be able to create this ecosystem where so many tech providers can come together in one place.
Are there any limiting factors on the number of fintechs that you can work with? Or is a bank, I should say, limited? Once they select somebody like, one provider, will they be locked into that provider, or do they have flexibility to continue to add more providers into it?
Our perspective is it should be about freedom of choice. And the way to think of it from our perspective is we want to help the banks take care of their customers and look at the end-to-end relationship. So just as a quick example, for digital account opening, there's a lot of problems in that space. There's adoption problems where banks don't have the solution, but there's also abandonment problems where customers try it, it's too complicated, and they leave. So we've took a different perspective in the solution that we'll be showing at Finovate West, and that was, can we help banks fill the funnel of potential depositors so that we're driving good business to them on the front end? Can we help them do a better job of solving that digital account opening process? And then if there are issues, can we connect to another third party that can provide an immediate co-browse function so that we can actually solve the problem real time instead of having a prospective customer walk away frustrated with that bank at the very first engagement?
Yeah, that's really cool. And I love the idea of the flexibility and the ability to keep moving. And I think it kind of fosters a slightly competitive ecosystem, which I think is really good for everybody in the end. It pushes fintech companies to continually make themselves better. It lets banks have a lot of flexibility. And I think ultimately the people who win are the customers of the banks, who end up having a lot more options to choose from in terms of what services they want to get, what companies provide them. So, switching gears a little bit, talking about it from the fintech side, are there any indicators that you guys look for among fintech companies that would signify to you that they're a good fit for your ecosystem? Or maybe putting another way, what are the signs that a company should be reaching out to you?
The best way I think of it is, and let's use commercial customers as an example. If you're a small business, there's a lot you need to do to be able to set up your business, to run your business, and then to grow your business. And the traditional bank services are just a fraction of that. So the fintechs that would be interesting to partner with in BankOS would be those that help solve some of those other issues. So if you're just setting up your business, you're trying to incorporate yourself, you're finding your accountant, you're dealing with tax issues, maybe you're a gig worker and you need to pay taxes. So is there a solution that can help you do that and still fit into the banking product set? Those are the types of solutions that are very interesting. So anything that really extends the value of the relationship, the customer relationship for the bank, I think those are all good fits for the BankOS system.
Cool. Well, there you go. For any fintechs listening, you've got kind of a nice list of things to be on the lookout for. And again, looking at this from the fintech side, from a bank side, you obviously hit a lot of the folks in the Finovate audience. So well done to you, and congrats on winning Best of Show. Now, I want to kind of end on something that's a little bit more abstract, because we've talked about the way that fintech has evolved, but let's talk about core banking and the nature of core banking services. That is evolving. You were kind of recognizing that we're in a moment where there are some pain points to it. And obviously a lot of the contracts that have been put together were structured many years ago, not necessarily as relevant as they were then. In your view, how do core banking services evolve over the next few years? What are you kind of betting on, both on a personal level and as Finzly?
Right. There's going to be a lot happening. First off, the banks are all demanding the same thing. They want access to their customers' data. They want to be able to serve their customers more effectively. They want the freedom of choice. And that's really what was revealed through the ABA Core Committee work. What I see, just from my own personal perspective, is if we look across banks and credit unions, and there's still 9,000 institutions across the US, there's probably 10% that will make some kind of a change that's substantial. They'll choose a non-traditional core, maybe a core that's coming outside the US, trying to get into the US market. Maybe it's one of the newer cores that's coming out with a cloud-native, API-native solution. There will be about maybe 10% of the banks that might go down that path. So the question is, what happens with everybody else, right? So how can you minimize the risk of old technology, but still move forward in areas that really matter? How can you innovate for the benefit of your customers? How can you drive efficiency in your operations so you can continue to grow and scale your business? It's going to be interesting what happens over the next few years, but my bet is going to be there's still going to be a few hundred banks that switch from one traditional core to another. That seems to be the historical landscape that I've seen. And so I would expect that to continue. And then you're going to see the early adopters and the innovators start to experiment a bit. There will probably be more focus on how can we take a iterative approach here where we take component by component. So I would expect to see parallel cores becoming very popular. We could set up a parallel core. It brings in new technology. It allows us to build the ecosystem around that new core. And it allows us to capture new market opportunities where maybe we couldn't before. So, Finzly BankOS is really positioned well to be able to help banks through this process, to connect to the existing cores, to be able to connect to the new cores as well, and all in the spirit of speeding up and accelerating innovation.
It's a really interesting perspective because I think it's sometimes at Finovate and in the fintech community more broadly, we look at somebody, you say, okay, you can get 900 banks to switch. Like that's massive. That's a huge achievement. But when it comes to, as a percentage of the overall ecosystem, it really is not that much. And so, there, I think will be quite a few people who, for a variety of very valid reasons, are not going to be looking to make a switch in the core service provider category, but still looking to obviously engage with these new fintech solutions and do the things you're talking about, get more data on their customers, engage their customers in a friendlier, more intuitive way. And so I think, it's going to be really fascinating to watch this space. And of course, now we've got you on recording, so I'm going to play this for you in 5 years. We'll come back and we'll check on you then, Dave.
You can hold me to it.
Sounds good. Well, appreciate you taking the time, Dave. Congrats again on winning Best of Show. Look forward to seeing what you've got coming up for us here at Finovate West. And thanks again.
Thank you so much, Greg.
The Finovate podcast is produced by Informa Connect in association with Provoke.fm Media. Check out Finovate.com for information on Finovate's upcoming shows and to learn how you can get involved. The discount code Finovate Podcast will save you 20% on tickets to all of our events. And you can email us at info@finovate.com for information on sponsoring, speaking, or demoing. Thanks for listening.